The rain fell in sheets across the abandoned mining colony, turning the red dust of Kepler 442b into crimson mud. Elias Wren pulled his coat tighter, cursing the faulty environmental shields that should have kept this sector dry. As a salvage operator, he'd seen plenty of forgotten places across the galaxy. But this one felt particularly desolate. That's when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A child's sob, raw and frightened, cutting through the storm. Elias froze. There shouldn't be anyone here. The colony had been evacuated 3 years ago when the mines ran dry. He followed the sound to a collapsed storage unit, its metal frame twisted like paper. Huddled inside, wrapped in what looked like torn silk that shimmered even in the dim light, was a child no older than 5 or 6. The boy's eyes were strange vertical pupils that caught the light like mirrors, glowing faintly amber. His skin had an odd iridescence. And when he looked up at Elias, tear-streaked and terrified, the salvager saw something else. Small, translucent scales along the child's temples. "Hey there, little one," Elias said softly, crouching down to the boy's level. "You're okay now. I've got you." The child flinched, pressing himself further into the wreckage. He said something in a language Elias didn't recognize, melodic, with consonants that sounded like wind through crystal chimes. Elias didn't know what species the boy belonged to. The galaxy was vast, and he'd only encountered maybe a dozen of the thousands of sentient races that populated it. What he did know was that a child was a child, regardless of how many fingers they had or what color their blood ran. "I'm not going to hurt you," Elias continued, keeping his voice gentle. He slowly removed his coat and held it out. "You must be freezing. Here." The boy, Prince Valor, though Elias had no way of knowing, stared at the offered garment. In his short life, the prince had been surrounded by ceremony, by beings who bowed before speaking, who would never dare meet his eyes directly. This human knew none of that. This human simply saw a scared child in the rain. Tentatively, Valor reached out and took the coat. It swallowed his small frame, but it was warm and dry. Something in his chest, tight and panicked since the attack on his transport ship, began to ease. "That's it," Elias encouraged. "Now, let's get you somewhere safe. My ship's not far. We'll get you warmed up, fed, and figure out where you belong." Valor didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He'd heard that tone before, from his mother, before she died. Kindness without agenda, care without calculation. When Elias extended his hand, Valor took it. The human's ship was small and cluttered, filled with salvaged parts and tools Valor couldn't identify, but it was warm. Elias sat him down in the co-pilot's chair, wrapped him in thermal blankets, and produced a ration bar from somewhere in the chaos. "Not exactly gourmet," Elias said with an apologetic smile, "but it'll keep your belly full." Valor nibbled at it cautiously. It tasted nothing like the delicacies served in the Crystal Palace, but the human watched him with such genuine concern that Valor ate the whole thing. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Elias tried his translation matrix, cycling through hundreds of languages. Nothing matched. The boy's species wasn't in any database Elias had access to. That should have been his first clue. There were only a handful of species that kept themselves so isolated, so protected, that their language wouldn't appear in common galactic records. The Draconian Empire was one of them. "Well, buddy, looks like we're doing this the old-fashioned way," Elias said, pointing to himself. "Elias. I'm Elias." He pointed to the boy. "You?" The child understood the gesture. He placed a small hand on his own chest, scales glinting. "Valor." "Valor," Elias repeated, smiling. "Good to meet you, Valor. Let's get you home." What Elias didn't know, couldn't know, was that at that very moment, half the galaxy was mobilizing. The Dragon Emperor's only heir had been missing for 6 hours. 6 hours since his transport was attacked by pirates who didn't realize what they'd stumbled upon until it was too late. 6 hours since Valor's guards died protecting him, managing to hide him in an escape pod before the ship exploded. 6 hours since the Emperor had dispatched 1,000 warships to find his son. The Draconian Empire didn't negotiate. They didn't ask. When their heir was threatened, entire star systems learned the meaning of draconic fury. 3 pirate bases had already been reduced to atoms. 2 trading posts that refused to share surveillance data had been occupied. The Empire was prepared to burn the sector to ash, if necessary. And yet, as military vessels tore through hyperspace and intelligence networks across 100 worlds, scrambled to find any trace of the young prince, Valor sat in a salvager's ship, wrapped in blankets that smelled like machine oil and human, listening to Elias hum an old Earth tune while plotting a course to the nearest hub station. "We'll find your family," Elias promised, not knowing he was speaking to the most important child in 3 spiral arms. "I swear it, Valor. You'll see them again." Valor, who understood tone, if not words, felt something he hadn't felt since the attack safe. This strange, soft-skinned human, with his battered ship and gentle hands, had done what the Empire's finest warriors were trained to do. He'd protected the heir, not because of duty, not because of law, simply because it was right. When the Emperor's fleet finally tracked the escape pod's trajectory to Kepler 442b 3 hours later, when their sensors locked onto the salvage ship departing the system, Valor was asleep in the co-pilot's chair. Elias had draped another blanket over him and was softly singing a lullaby his own mother had once sung. The Imperial flagship decloaked directly ahead, so massive it blotted out the stars. Elias's console exploded with warnings and override commands. His ship's controls locked. A voice, ancient and terrifying, filled his cabin, speaking perfect English now. "Human. You carry something precious." Elias instinctively moved between the console and the sleeping child. "He's under my protection." There was a pause. Then, something that might have been laughter. "Yes, we know." When the Emperor himself materialized on the ship, reality bending to accommodate his presence, Elias understood what he'd found. The being before him was ancient, powerful beyond measure, scales like polished obsidian, eyes that held the weight of millennia. Behind him, through the viewport, 1,000 ships waited. Valor stirred at the familiar presence and woke. When he saw his father, he smiled, tired but safe, and said something in that crystal chime language. The Emperor's expression softened in a way that would have shocked his court. He responded, then looked at Elias with an intensity that should have been terrifying. "You protected my son. You showed him kindness when you believed him powerless. You offered him safety without thought of reward." The Emperor's voice resonated with something profound. "The Draconian Empire does not forget debts, Elias, Wren of Earth. You will want for nothing. Your world will know our favor. Your species—" "I don't want payment," Elias interrupted, somehow finding his voice. "I'd do it again. Any human would. That's what we do." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. Then he bowed, an emperor bowing to a salvager, and said the words that would echo through galactic history. "Then humanity has earned something far more valuable than favor. You have earned our respect." As Valor was gently transferred to his father's arms, he looked back at Elias and waved a small gesture from a small hand that would reshape the cosmos. The humans had shown the dragons what they valued most, and the dragons would never forget.